5 miles from the heart of downtown Sydney, sandstone headlands give way to a beach whose name in the Dharawal language means the sound of waves breaking over rocks. Bondi. But 2 evenings ago, it was the sound of gunfire that echoed across Australia's most famous beach. The 24-year-old gunman who survived and his father, who was killed, opened fire on a Hanukkah event. Their 10-minute killing spree left 15 dead. Australian police today said they were investigating why the pair travelled to the southern Philippines last month. The Australian Prime Minister said there was evidence they'd been inspired by the Islamic State group. Extraordinary dashcam footage has emerged of a man in the pale purple shirt wrestling with one of the gunmen, then snatching his weapon. The shooter then pulls another gun and kills the man and his wife. Boris and Sophia Gurman were about to celebrate their 35th wedding anniversary. These pictures from 2019 show the son, Naveed Akram, proselytizing to strangers in Sydney.
Always pray.
Two of his associates from that time have been jailed for links with terrorism. Naveed Akram was interviewed by Australian intelligence, but never arrested. This looks like a massive intelligence failure, was it?
It has the hallmarks of that, but I'm not privy to the detail of their intelligence research and analysis. But at the moment, it does look like that. And we need to get to the bottom of that, because what we expect from our security service, as Brits expect from MI5, is they will keep life safe to the very best of their abilities. And that means if you have someone who is associating with terrorists, you not only talk to them, look at them.
But he had been talked to.
Yes, but then apparently he fell off the radar, which at the moment seems inexplicable.
If true, it's a failure that would vindicate the view of many in the Jewish community that they are no longer safe here. They've already faced a surge in anti-Semitic attacks, which happened to coincide with Israel's 2-year-long bombardment of Gaza. They felt vulnerable, and they said so. Per capita, Australia has the highest number of descendants of Holocaust survivors of any country in the world outside of Israel. Parents and grandparents who came here to get as far away as humanly possible from the horrors and darkness of Hitler's Third Reich. Aside from the transgenerational trauma they carry, it's also impacted the politics and allegiances of Australian Jews, a large proportion of whom are stridently pro-Israel.
Having walked around the floral display this morning, I feel the sadness and the grief. But I also know that the Jewish community in Sydney and in Australia is angry. The anger is red-hot anger. We knew that this was going to happen. I think that what has happened in Gaza has lit a fuse. They say that anti-Semitism is a light sleeper. Anti-Semitism had never really disappeared from Australia's streets. It was simply simmering beneath the surface.
Many in the Jewish community have criticised the Prime Minister for not fully implementing the recommendations of his own anti-Semitism envoy 6 months after they were published. Anxiety simmers here, too, in Lakemba, in Sydney's southwest, where Muslims comprise 60% of the population.
I've got Muslims right now that are fearful going to the mosque, Muslim students fearful going to school.
Fearful of a backlash?
Because they're fearful that they will be targeted by right-wing extremists that see them as the perpetrator. Pain and crisis is something that we don't like, but the Muslim community has gone through this. I mean, we remember our neighbours in Christchurch. We know the pain that comes alongside that when you are targeted because of who you are. And I think that's the compassion that we're ready to offer to our Jewish brothers and sisters.
There was widespread relief here when the Bondi hero turned out to have been a middle-aged Muslim immigrant who disarmed one gunman. Today, the Prime Minister paid a visit to Ahmed El Ahmad in recognition of his courage.
He decided to take action, and his bravery is an inspiration for all Australians. He is a very humble man. Tomorrow he will undergo further surgery.
A sombre silence has descended on Bondi. It's hard to find words in the face of unspeakable evil. For the people of Bondi, for Jews, for Muslims, for Australians, the enormity of what happened here is slowly now sinking in.
Jonathan Miller reporting from Sydney. Well, joining me now is Mark Regev, a former senior advisor to the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and a former Israeli ambassador to the UK. He was born in Australia and grew up there. Mark Regev, welcome back to the programme. I mean, you left Australia, I think, when you were 21 years old. I don't know if you still have relatives there, but you must have been absolutely heartbroken and horrified by those images of the last few days.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. It's good to be back with you, Matt. It's been a while, as I said, and it's a pity it's under such circumstances. I have siblings in Australia. I have extended family in Australia. Of course, I've been on the phone with them a lot. And what your reporter said about Australian Jews being predominantly the descendants of survivors of the Holocaust, people like my father who arrived in Australia immediately in the post-war period, who wanted to get as far away from Europe, which for them was this one large cemetery. Their communities had been annihilated, their families had been murdered. They just wanted to get as far away from Europe and all that represented for them, which was hatred and discrimination and genocide, and to find a corner of the world where they could rebuild their lives in a free country. And the Australia that we saw just now in your report, that's not the Australia that I remember, that I grew up in.
I mean, there were people in Jonathan's report and also people in the reports that we did after the Manchester attack a few months ago of Jewish citizens in Britain and in Australia wondering whether those countries were still safe for them, contemplating moving to Israel, something that they hadn't done in the past. I mean, are those countries, is Australia still safe for Jewish citizens?
Well, it should be. I mean, and that's the obligation of the Australian government, just as the British government has the obligation to make sure that British Jews are safe. And I remember when I was the ambassador of Israel in the United Kingdom, there was very good cooperation on these sort of security issues between the organized Jewish community and the British government. And the Jewish community would praise what the British government does and acknowledge what the British government does to help keep British Jews safe. Unfortunately, from what I hear from my family and other friends in Australia, that's not the way the Australian Jewish community is looking at the actions of the Australian government, and you have to ask why.
Well, why? Why do you think that's the case?
I think the wide opinion in the Jewish community, and once again, I don't speak for the Jewish community, I don't speak for the government of Israel, I'm only speaking for myself. But from my impression, it is that they don't think the Australian government has followed through. I mean, the words are good words. One can't complain about the words of Anthony Albanese, the Australian Prime Minister, but has he followed through in action? I mean, I think even his closest supporters would have to tell you that what we saw was a failure. I mean, 15 people murdered on Bondi Beach is not something that should be considered a success story.
Well, there's a difference between an intelligence failure, which I think we heard in Jonathan's report, you know, a senior intelligence official acknowledging the possibility of that, and also political policy. So Prime Minister Netanyahu, who you used to work for, was very quick to blame the recognition of Palestine by the Australian government as adding, I think his words were, fuel to the fire of anti-Semitism, blaming, you know, the recognition of that state for what happened at the weekend. Do you think that's a fair accusation?
I think you can talk about when you recognized, and Britain did it too, as did France, yes, when you recognize a Palestinian state so shortly after October 7th and the massacre of Jews by Hamas, are you not rewarding terrorism? I mean, I think that's not an argument you can ignore. That is a serious, I think, a serious point to make, and it needs to be made. You can believe in two-state solution, you can believe in that, but you suddenly go forward and do more and recognize a Palestinian state after the Palestinian society, under Hamas, but not condemned much by the PA on the West Bank when they refused to condemn October 7th.
Right.
I mean, these are the people that deserve statehood.
But there's no evidence that we know of to suggest that the question of recognizing Palestine, is directly linked to the actions of these two killers.
I never said there was, and I don't think Prime Minister Netanyahu said there was.
Well, he made the implication that there was.
No, he said that he thought the government of Australia, rightly or wrongly, depending on your opinion, was not doing enough to fight anti-Semitism, and that by appeasing terror, by rewarding terror, he was helping to fuel the fire. And I think that is a legitimate comment.
I put your Prime Minister's comments to a former Australian Prime Minister, Malcolm Turnbull, from the Liberal Party, a friend of Israel. I mean, I think he had close relations with Mr. Netanyahu. He said, my message to Prime Minister Netanyahu is stay out of politics, our politics. You're not helping. That was his comment.
So I'd respond by saying if Prime Minister Netanyahu had said the Australian government is adopting its policies because of certain electorates in Western Sydney or because of other internal reasons to appease the left of his own party, that would be interfering in politics. But he didn't say that. He talked about the Jewish community and abandoning the Jewish community, not doing enough to safeguard the Jewish community. And I believe for Israel, that's not interfering in someone's politics. That's talking about the rights of Jews everywhere. That's what Israel's all about.
Okay, we're going to leave it there. Mark Regev, thank you very much indeed.